Welcome to the Empowered Entrepreneur Show. Discover your life's purpose, reprogram your mind for success, and attract an abundance of paying clients to your business. Now, here's your host, Tom Tenaglia.
Aloha, Empowered Entrepreneur. I am Tom Tenaglia, and you're listening to the Empowered Entrepreneur Show. And today I want to pivot slightly from talking about attracting our ideal client to a little bit more mindset. And the reason why is, as entrepreneurs, as humans actually, there's often a desire to not want to make mistakes. There's often a desire to avoid mistakes. And the interesting thing about that then is, what actually is a mistake? What actually is what we would label as mistake? And from my perspective, there really isn't such a thing as a mistake. There's just something that, we're learning. There's lessons. There's things that we need to learn along the way. And so what happens, the reason why I want to talk about this is because mistakes, or the desire to avoid failure or mistakes, can often keep an entrepreneur from taking those next steps. And what I've seen is basically a process by which, people will interpret something, and then they may label it as a mistake. And it's really then up to, did they get the lesson from it? And what's interesting about this is each person involved could have their own lesson. That what one person perceives as the meaning or the interpretation behind something doesn't necessarily mean that that's actually what it is. That's just what it is to the person who is interpreting it that way. And the lesson behind it is what it is to the person who's interpreting it that way as well. Now, there are certain things that are reality, and there are certain things that, they're just statements of what occurred, but you can't take a factual statement of what occurred and still label it without doing some sort of interpretation. So the behavior of something or the situation, it's like, that's what occurred. But any interpretation of it then is some sort of label that we put on it. And it's that interpretation that can lead it to saying, is it a mistake or not? And really the key is, did you get a lesson from it? Did you get a lesson from it? And did everyone involved get their own lesson? And yet you can't be concerned with anyone else's lesson. People will, they will generally, sometimes they'll point the finger at somebody else and say it's their fault and blah, 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 and all that. And if they're pointing the finger at you, sometimes you can't say, hey, there's three fingers pointing back at you. Sometimes you just have to ask yourself, well, why is the finger being pointed at me in the first place? What's my lesson here? And you can't worry about whether or not they get their own lesson. See, I understand that for an event to occur in somebody's life, there has to be something that it's like they put it out there somehow. And yet, unless they're my client, it's not the easiest thing, because I can't point those things out. I just have to look at, where did it come from? Why is it in my reality? And how do I need to navigate this? And so it's often an interesting thing, because we don't want to make mistakes. If people get to where they are because they avoided mistakes, they may actually be avoiding getting further to where they could be if they had simply, also been willing to take that chance. In other words, the mistake avoidance could be hindering somebody from achieving the very thing they need, because they just look at, I got from point A to point E by avoiding mistakes. Yeah, but if they want to get to point Z, they might actually have to fail. And the key is to learn. The key is to get back up, get the lesson, move forward, dust yourself off. And it's like the only way to truly avoid making all the mistakes is just you're not doing anything, and in which case that could be a mistake too. So I don't like to label things as mistakes or not, because there is no good or bad truly, in the sense of like everything is because of a way that we label it. So if we make a mistake, it's just, how did we define it as a mistake? And what are we learning from this? If there's a situation that occurred and that situation occurred in your life, then it's looking at what is it that you learned from it that prompted that situation to occur, and how do you then move forward? Okay. So, it's really just thinking through these things, because people what they're going to do is operate from what got them to where it is that they are already, and they're going to continue to operate that way because that's been safe. And if they avoided mistakes and they get, move forward in life, they may navigate away from them. I would much rather embrace a situation, learn from it, gain a mistake, gain a lesson from a mistake and move forward. It's interesting because I believe it was Einstein who wrote on a chalkboard he wrote, I think, the 9 times tables, and he got to the last one, and he had written the last one just one digit off. So I think instead of saying 9 times 10 is 90, he wrote 9 times 10 is 89 or something. And the class laughed, and he said, let that be a good point. He said, I put 10 problems on the board, 9 of which were correct. 1 was wrong, and you're all focusing on the one that was wrong. Like, that's what happens. People will do that. I've done that in the sense of I've been correct half a dozen times, 1 time wrong, all in the same meeting. People remember the thing that I said that was wrong. People remember the question that I had that was a mistake. People, they don't remember the things that were correct. And so, yeah, people tend to learn, well, let me just not make these mistakes, because, as a society, we tend not to embrace them. We tend not to celebrate them. And yet in ancient times, they would celebrate the lesson. They would celebrate the seed. They would celebrate the growth that you gain from the experience. And so as an entrepreneur, I like to look at, one, if I fall flat on my face, it's because I got a lesson, and it's the experience that led me to that lesson, and it was because of the lesson that I needed the experience. And so knowing that I got the lesson is great, because it shows me that I was moving forward. It shows me that I'm outside of my comfort zone. It shows me that I'm taking those chances. I'm doing these things that propel me forward, and hopefully propel society forward as well. If I'm not in a position to help somebody recognize how they also created the situation, then I can't point it out to them. All I can do is recognize where I created it and navigate that. And people will, they'll point the finger at me or anybody else. It'll happen. And I just have to look at, okay, what did I do to create this? And where am I going to go from here? And it's up to them to figure out their own lesson. If they're my client, I can ask them a bunch of questions, and I can figure out exactly where it is that they're creating that same exact situation. Oftentimes, too, people that have pointed the finger at me will later tell me that they've had the same thing happen to them, or the shoe was on the other foot, and I'm just looking at it going, okay, well, it's either getting louder for them, or it's The universe is trying to get their attention. I'm just part of this process. What's the universe telling me? How do I navigate this? And then sometimes it's just people that are resistant to the fact that they had any play in it whatsoever. And what's interesting is then when I get my lesson, the same lesson that they had a hand in it will come from other ways. Like the universe will provide that lesson to them in other capacities. All I can do, though, is focus on my lessons. All you can do is focus on your own. All I can do is take chances, figure out what works, keep moving forward. Somehow, some way, the lessons will get you there. They always do. You truly can't fail in life. I mean, you really can't, because you've already picked the path to go. So if you just choose to stay on the path, because the universe will nudge you back to that path in one way or another, then as long as you choose to stay on that path, you'll get there. It's so interesting because I look at things and I go, well, I don't think I would have chosen the path to go a certain way. And I'm like, and then the path doesn't go that way. And then at times when the path does go that way, I have to go and ask, oh, shoot, I wonder why I chose it to go this way. And then it propels me forward. Most people don't know who I am. Most people don't know who they are themselves. And yet I will have to navigate people not knowing who I actually am when they're talking to me. Because of certain situations, I'm in a different situation, a different circumstance. Yeah, people may not value what I have to say because the circumstance doesn't warrant it. I mean, I would watch, in Hawaii, you watch a kumuhula at the Murray Monarch Hula Festival. They are very well respected. And people ask them questions. People listen to them. They just sit down. They find a time to talk. There's so much of that because the kumuhula are in their element. They're in the space that people are ready to listen to them. Yet, if somebody just saw them in a grocery store and they didn't know who they were, they might just think they're just an ordinary customer. And they don't even recognize it. They don't even know. You never know who you're talking to. There were people that I've talked to in the course of my life and then I found out later who they were. Can be a very humbling experience. And so it's okay to just take one step forward. Look at how you interpret something. Don't try to change somebody else's interpretation. Enter their reality. See how they see it. And be genuine in your responses. Take responsibility for the hand that you had in the situation. Absolutely. It's okay if they don't. You have to let go of any hooks on that as well. Because only then can you truly be free from the situation. If you no longer need them to also acknowledge. Because you forgive yourself and you move forward. And you have to look at what level of life did you choose? What level of the game are you playing? Because the universe will naturally hold you to that higher standard. And by truly embracing that, by truly embracing who it is that you are and the life that you're the life that you're living, then the level at which you're playing it, you will get the lessons that you need. And it'll be done in a way that is punno. It will be done in a way that is right. And you'll recognize the things that you chose, and why you chose them. So there aren't any mistakes if you get the lessons. And as long as you keep moving forward, and as long as you trust that, you know what, hey, I'm meant to achieve this, then any events that lead to lessons, they're not going to take you off that path. They're going to guide you to where it is you need to be to achieve the result you need to achieve. Because some lessons can look like they're just a total derail. And yet I realized that they're not. In fact, they're often the very lesson that I needed to get me further, faster. They were a derail because I couldn't see where the heck I was. And then it actually moved me further along. So you embrace them. You celebrate the lessons. It's okay. Let people interpret you however they need to. You just have no attachment to it. And everything will continue to work out. All right? So as you go through building your business, find your lessons. Just focus on you. The rest will take care of itself. Just do it in a calm, centered, and balanced way. And it will all be okay. All right? Entrepreneurs make mistakes. The important thing, do we learn from them? Do we learn from them? And with that, aloha, hui hou. I'll talk with you again soon. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Empowered Entrepreneur Show.